Hello guys, this is the part 2 of session 4, week 4 of Tinkering Bootcamp, and today we will dive into more interesting topics of OpenCV and see how they are used and how they can be interesting and so powerful sometimes. And I hope that you have seen the part 1 video. So we will be giving you the assignments most probably by tomorrow evening itself, and they will contain questions of OpenCV. So I hope that you will see both the parts of video very carefully. So today we will start with the morphological transforms. So basically the problem is that when we were doing the color filtering, if you remember in the previous video, then the problem was that there are four types of outputs. The first is the positive, the true positives. Okay, so the true positives are the one. So the object is red. As we were doing in the color filtering, we were targeting the red color. So the true positives are the ones that the color of the object is red, and the output is being given as a white mask. Okay, so that means that the positive is true. Okay, that means the output is correct. The other type is the true negative, that the object is not red, and also the mask output is being given at that pixel to be black. So that is true negative. That means that the pixel is not red and the output is also correct and it is black. That is it is being detected correctly. So these are the two out which are correct in a matter of saying. So the other two types are false positives and false negatives. So false positives are the ones, so like if an object is not red, a pixel is not red, and after that also it is returned as a white white pixel in the mask. So that it means that the it is a false positive, or the output is being incorrect. Okay, and the other type is the false negative. And what that means is that the object is red, the pixel is red, and the output is being given as a black pixel. That is, it is not being identified correctly to be red. So that is false negative. Okay, so that means that the pixel is actually kind of true. The pixel is red, but it is being identified incorrectly and is returned as a black pixel in the mask. So there are multiple ways of reducing the false positives and false negatives. So some of the ways are erode and dilate. Okay, so as you can see here, I've mentioned that erosion is where we will erode the edges. So the way this works is we work with a kind of slider. So this will be similar to the kernel which I mentioned in the previous video. So we give the slider a size, let's say 5 into 5 pixels. So what happens is we slide the slider around, and if all the pixels which are inside that slider, so say I specify the 5 by 5 slider, and if the slider is moving all along the picture, and if all the 25 pixels inside the slider at that moment of time are, if all the pixels are white, then we get the output as white only. But if even one of the pixel, or say a few of pixels are black, then the whole slider is blackened out, like the all 25 pixels which are inside that slider at that point of time are blacked out. So that is a way of removing the false positives, so that in false positives case, you can get see an example like that. So suppose there is a scissor which I used in the previous example. So there is a scissor, and a false positive of only a single white pixel is being detected very far away from the scissor because of some light issues or something like that. So the slider will when the slider will get close to that, will get onto that white false positive. So around that pixel, all the pixel values would be black, right? So it will automatically get converted into a black pixel, and hence the false positive will be removed. The other way is dilation. So dilation is just the opposite, and it will convert all the pixels into white if even a small number of pixels in the slider at that moment of time are white. So what this will do is this will reduce the false negatives. So the false negatives are one. Suppose that some of the pixels in the scissor itself are returned to be black, but we want them to be white, right? Because they are a part of the scissor and they are red in color. So we slide the slider along the pincher, and when it comes near that comes onto that false negative, so it will see that all the pixels around that false negative are white, so it will automatically convert that pixel into white, and hence this is known as dilation. So the terms are also self-explanatory, erosion and dilation. Okay, so now we will see what's the output of this. As you can see, this is the original one, this is dilation one, this is our mask, and this is the erosion one. So if I now bring the scissor into the picture, so as you can see, the erosion works fine on the outside boundaries, like, so you can see some noise here in the dilation and mask pictures. So the erosion removes that noise outside the scissor, as you can see, but inside the scissor the dilation works fine and gives us an excellent output. Okay, so the mask is also fine, but it consists of noise, right? So the erosion actually enhances the noise in the scissor but removes the noise outside the scissor, but the dilation enhances the noise outside the scissor and reduces the noise inside the scissor. So actually we need a combination of both of these to get an appropriate output. I hope you understood this. So now I will explain you what's the syntax. So basically the till here it is the same as we did for the previous color filtering examples. After that I specify a kernel, a 5 into 5 kernel like before, and after that I use the erode function, cv2.erode, and in the first one we give the mask which we created using the HSV as our input, and after that we give the kernel which will be used as a slider, and after that we mention the iterations. So iterations is like how many times the slider will move through the whole screen. So you can increase the iterations if you want, but most of the times the one iteration works fine in every case. Okay, so if you are specifying very small kernel size, then you can use multiple iterations, but if you are using something like 5 into 5 kernel, then one iteration will suffice. After that we have something called morphology X. So what this will do is, this is a combination of dilation and erosion. So first I will explain you what the cv2.morph open is. So here what we are doing is, we are sending the input as the mask, then we are specifying the method which we have to use, and after that the kernel. So what does the cv2.morph open means? So the goal with opening, the I have named the variable as opening, where we are using morph open. So the goal with the opening is to remove false positives. Okay, so the idea of closing is to remove the false negatives. So morph open will do, as I mentioned here, first erode the frame and then dilate it. Okay, so first using the erosion we will remove the false positives, and using the dilation after that we can use the reduce the noise inside the scissor. So you remember, right, the erosion reduced noise which was present outside the scissor, but it also distorted our output of the scissor. as the scissor was not being able to get detect easily, and it was distorting the our output. But when we use dilate, the scissor will also give a decent output. So after that, the second is morph close. So first it will dilate and then erode. So as you can remember, the scissor will get enhanced in this case, and also the noise in the background, right? So the erode which we will use after the dilation will essentially remove the background noise. Okay, and after that there is one more method, morph grad. Grad is the abbreviation for gradient, and it will do this. First it will dilate, then it will erode, and then get a output by subtracting them. So most of the times we use morph open and morph close in a pair, as we get an excellent output when we combine these two. So when I run this, you can see what's the output. So as you can see, I have labeled the tabs. So when I bring the picture into the frame, so as you can see here, the opening gives us an excellent output in terms of the back removing the background noise, and the closing gives us an excellent output in in terms of detecting the scissor. Okay, so you must be seeing the noise still. So that is because my hand is little bit shaky. So if you use a particularly still object, so you will probably not get this noise which is present inside. Okay, so this is the use of the morphology X. You can use the erode and dilate functions separately also. That is not an issue. So let's try something. Let's do this. Let's see what's the output in this case. So as you can see, what I have done here is now I've given the variable opening inside the closing. Okay, so I have essentially provided the image first the morph open, and after that I have applied morph close on it. So as you were seeing in the output, we get an excellent output by combining these two. You can use these separately also. You can even use the erode and dilate functions directly. It's up to you and up to your purpose as to what fits in your fits best according to you. So after that we have this very popular edge detection. So when we use OpenCV in projects like AUV and autonomous car, so detection is very powerful in that case and provides us an excellent output in terms of detecting the edges of objects and detecting the objects and so on. So the syntax is pretty straightforward, and it is edges is equal to, I specified the variable edges, and after that cv2.canny. The algorithm which it uses is canny edge detection, so it has named the function according to it. So cv2.canny, and then I am specifying my input image, input frame, and after that these are two values, 100 and 200. So what does this mean? So first is the threshold 1 and second is the threshold 2. So the smallest value between threshold 1 and threshold 2 is used for edge linking, and the largest value is used to find initial segments of strong edges. So essentially what this means is the largest value, in this case 200, will be used to detect the particularly long edges, right? So 100 is used for the edge linking, and linking the strong edges which are detected by using the threshold 2. As you can see, this gives us a quite good result. So the problem is that my background is not that great right now. So if I bring a particular object near it, say for a scissor which I was using, so as you can see, this such a precise object which such a precise output is given, and it detects every detail of the scissor, even the screw which we have in on the scissor. So the Canny edge detection is very powerful and gives us a very precise output. After that, we have geometric transformations. So these are basically resize, translation, rotation, etc. So first I will show you what resize is. So the first is I'm sending the input as img cv2.resize, then I'm sending the input as the image which I have read. So this is the same watch.jpg which I used in the beginning. After that, I specify fx is equal to 2 and fy is equal to 2. So this is the amount of scaling which I want in each direction. So fx is in the x direction and fy is in the y direction. So this will scale the image, this will size the multiply the image by the factor which we send as the value of fx in the x direction. Okay, so as I have specified 2 and 2 in both, so this will give us an image which is scaled to 2 times. Okay, and this is the interpolation is equal to cv2 dot intercubic. So interpolation is like the method which you want to interpolate. So interpolate, you must have heard in the graphs, like some functions don't end and we interpolate the lines or the graph to the axis. So this works the same way, and after we have resized the image, we want a method to interpolate the image to increase the number of pixels. So essentially what we are doing is we are increasing the number of pixels, so we need a method for interpolation. So if I run this, you can see the image is exactly scaled to 2 times in every direction. Okay, as you can see here, in this direction also it is scaled to 2 times, and in this direction also it is scaled to 2 times. Okay, so after that we have translation. Translation is the shifting of objects location. So this is not used very commonly, but it's good to know about what OpenCV can do. So what we do is we specify the input, the by which we want to translate the image as in this format, in this matrix format. So what is this essentially? So this is common for all translations, 1 0 0 1, and then we specify tx and ty. So this is these are the new coordinates, the new x and y on which we want our image origin to be located. And remember, the image origin is calculated from the top left corner, as I mentioned before. So what I do is I use create a matrix of this format using the numpy array. So as you can see here, I'm giving the first list 1 0 100, and the second list 0 1 50. So when you end the list and put a comma and then start a new list, though, so the new list essentially becomes a new row in case of numpy. So then I use the function warpfine. Okay, so this function is used for translation. So this is actually, the warpfine is not particularly for translation, it just multiplies the image by this matrix. Okay, so this can be used for rotation also, as we will see after this. So I'm specifying the matrix which I created, and after that I'm specifying cols and rows. Okay, so cols rows is the size of the output image. Okay, so I want to keep the output same as the input image, so I'm using rows cols is equal to image dot shape. Okay, so when I run this, you can see there are two outputs. The first one is the original image and the second is the translated one. So suppose I want to translate it and also see the full image. So what I can do is I can multiply these columns and rows by a factor of 2 in order to see the full image. So I will do this, and you can see that we get the full image now, but it's translated from the top left corner. After this we come to rotation. So there's a particular function defined for getting a rotation matrix, but because the rotation matrix is not in a simple format, as far as the translation matrix is concerned, this is a very simple format, but the rotation matrix is quite complex. You can read about it on the internet. So it is used in robotics, in path planning, etc., in controls. So rotation matrix is a very complex matrix, and you can get the rotation matrix using the function specified here. So the function is get rotation matrix 2D. So you can rotate the image in 3D also, but that is not used commonly, so we are skipping that. And the syntax is this: get rotation matrix, then we specify the center about which we want to rotate our image, then we specify the angle and the scale. So here I'm specifying cols by 2 and rows by 2, that is the exact center. So give a minute and think about that, how the center is equal to cols by 2 comma rows by 2. And after that I specify the angle to be 90 and the scale to be 1, as I don't want to scale the image while rotating. So the distance, then I get the output in a dst variable, and I use the same warp affine function. Then I specify the input as the img image, the matrix M which we get using the get rotation matrix 2D, and after that I specify the cols and rows. So cols and rows, as I mentioned above, is the size of the output image. As we are not scaling the image here, so we don't actually need the number of the need to increase the number of cols and rows. So as you can see here, ASD and IMG, you can see the output here. The image is rotated by an angle of 90 degrees. So next we come to the affine transform. So as you can see here, the affine transform of an image. So first we had a perpendicular image, but then we tilted it about the z-axis to give it a little bit of angle with respect to our eyes, and so you can see the angle of viewing has changed. So we can do this using the OpenCV. And how can we do that? That is simply done by specifying the points on the image which we want to change. So I have specified 50 50, 250 and 50 comma 200. So and then I want to specify which points these points will be converted to. So the 50 comma 50 which will be sort of dragged to 10 comma 100. So I've kept 200 comma 50 at its same position, and 50 comma 200 would be dragged to 100 comma 250. Okay, so after that I use the function get affine transform. This matrix is also a little bit complex, so we have a particular function defined for getting the matrix. Then I specify points 1 and points 2 and get the matrix M. After that I use the warp affine function and just give my inputs as I did before. And as you can see in the output, our image is now a little bit rotated with respect to the z-axis, and hence give us a little bit of perspective view. Okay. So after that there is perspective transform. So what is the function of perspective transform actually? So sometimes you must have seen in the case of Cam Scanner, if you have used that before. Okay, so what Cam Scanner does is it does the same thing which I have shown in the pictures below. So as you can see, the first input image is not perfectly perpendicular to the camera, right? So the points, also the corner points of the Sudoku table, is also not in a perfect square or rectangle, and in a sort of trapezium, right? So what we do is we mention the points of the square, points of the Sudoku table, and then, as you can see here in the points one, I have mentioned the corners of the Sudoku table, the image which I have. So these are gettable by using a software like Paint or by trial and error method. So I have mentioned the points of the Sudoku table, and if you count the number of rows which are between, and number of rows and columns which are between each point, between 2 points also, then you will see that this is a sort of trapezium, and not, no, actually not a trapezium also. This is a random polygon and not a square or rectangle. So what again we do is we specify points 2 and then specify a square. So I have done 0 comma 0, 500 comma 0, 0 comma 500, and 500 comma 500. So what this will do is this will map 72 comma 85 to 0 comma 0, and similarly with other points. So this will give an output similar to the one which you can see below. So it will map the points onto the corners of a square. So it will then give us a square, a perpendicular image, image which is perpendicular to our eyes. Okay, so that's the way, that's how the perspective transform works. So we also have a function to get the perspective transform matrix, as you can see here. So in this case, the function which I use is a little bit different, and I used warp perspective instead of warp affine, and this is the same as warp affine, just the difference of name, and it is used for only perspective transform. So as you can see here, this was a perspective image, but it is now converted to an image which is perpendicular to us. So perspective images are not very good for reading, so we can convert them to perpendicular images. Next we come to the structure analysis. Structure analysis is all about finding contours and marking them. So contours are basically contours help us to detect particular shapes which are present in an image, or particular objects which are present. So we will see what that means through examples. So basic examples which we have. So first I use the Canny Edge detector, Canny Edge detector function on my image, and I detect the edges using that. After that, I use the function find contours. So the output is given as contours comma hierarchy. So you don't actually need to know what's hierarchy. It's like non-significant, but you can read about it. I've mentioned it here what that means. You can also search on the internet about hierarchy, but it is not that useful to invest your time on. So contours is essentially uh, a vector of points. So suppose you have a circle on your image and you want to detect that. So you can use dot find contours, and what it will do is it will give you a vector of all the output of all the points which are present on the boundary of that circle. Okay, so we use the function dot find contours on the image which we have. So also one thing, the problem with dot find contours and the other functions which we'll see later, is that you can only send an input image that is 8-bit single channel image. Okay, so single channel essentially means that uh, uh, so our original image had 4 channels, right? The RGB and the alpha channel. so we have to convert it to a single channel. So the basic functions you can use is adaptive threshold, threshold in range, canny. So basically what it does is it takes in a mask. Actually it takes in a mask, you can say. So the normal images won't work here because they are 4 channel images. So you can use these functions before on the original image to create the input image for the dot find contours. So many different types of modes and methods are present, but very commonly used are the cv2 dot retr underscore external and cv2 dot chain approx none. You can read about them on the internet if you want. So after that we print the number of contours using the len function, len of contours, and we also draw the contours. So this is the function which I am using, cv2 dot draw contours, and I am sending in the image. Then I am sending in the variable, the output which we got from the find contours. Then I am specifying the index of the contour which I want to draw. So -1 means draw all the contours which are given as output. You can also use 0, 1, 2 like you do in while using list or strings, and you can select which contour out of the list of contours which is outputted by the find contours to draw. Then I specify the color and then the thickness. So as you can see here, the original image was the rectangle, the black rectangle, the blue T and the red circle, but now it has created a it has drawn yellow contours on all of the figures. Okay, so I have used the yellow color here, as you can see, BGR, so green plus red is equal to yellow. So this is the way which you can use to detect objects particularly. RTR external, which we have used here, outputs only the external contours. So as you saw in the image which I gave as output, so only the outer boundaries, as you can see here, the only the output boundaries are marked as contours and drawn upon them. So the RDTR external outputs only the external contours. Okay, so if you use something like RETR CC CComp, then it outputs all the contours. Okay, so you can play with them. There are not much types of different types of contour methods, but you can use RETR external and RETR CComp as the basic ones. So now another function is the bounding rectangles. So the dot bounding rectangles is used to get the rectangles which enclose a particular shape. So suppose I use the bounding rectangle on the above image. So what it will do is it will give me a rectangle which encloses the circle, the T, and the bigger rectangle which we have. Okay, so it will create a bounding rectangle, as it is explainable from the name itself. It will create a bounding rectangle. So what the output of bounding rectangle is, so it is x, y, w and h. I have given the variables these names, and x, y are the x and y are the coordinates of the left topmost corner of the bounding rectangle, which is detected by the function, and w and h are the width and height of the rectangle. So I use the cv2 dot rectangle to draw the image, to draw the bounding rectangle. And as you can see here, the original image which I used was this lightning symbol, and it has created a bounding rectangle, the rectangle which uh, encloses the shape of ours. Okay, so minimum bounding rectangle is also used many times. as it is very useful in many cases. So as you can see, it gives us a rectangle which totally encompasses a lightning symbol. So there is another feature called the convex hull. So as you can see here, this is a convex image, right? So basically, what is a convex shape? So convex shape is a shape in which if you connect two of any two corners, and the line passes, and the line joining the two corners of the shape passes through outside of the shape. So as you can see here, if I join this corner and this corner of the shape, then it passes through outside of the shape. So this is a convex shape, and for this we use a feature known as convex hull. So it will give out a minimum bounding arbitrary shape if you want the minimum bound of your hand or something sort like that, something of a similar shape. So next we come to the minimum enclosing circle, and other functions are also present like minimum area rectangle or minimum ellipse, some functions like that. So what we were doing is we previously we were creating a normal bounding rectangle. So bounding rectangle might not be the minimum one for some particular shapes. Okay, so we have particular functions if you want to have the minimum enclosing circle or the minimum area rectangle. So this will give the smallest rectangle or the smallest circle which will enclose your shape. So for the input we require an array or a matrix. So we have to pass a contour or an edge, an output of the canny edge function as the input to use this minimum enclosing circle. So what I'm using is I'm first finding the contours in the image, and then I'm using the minimum enclosing circle on the contour 1. So that is the second contour which is detected. Okay, so the contours are returned as a list of contours, and you can use the index as I've used here to specify which contours you want to use to draw or send in the minimum enclosing circle. Okay, so after that the output of minimum enclosing circle is the center, the x and y coordinates of the center, and after that the radius. Okay, though, so I have used center is equal to int x int y. So I use the int function here, so that is to round off the coordinates. So the output from the minimum closing circle will be in the float format, in the decimal format. So in order to draw a circle using the cv2 dot circle, we need to specify the center as as an integer coordinates. So I'm using the int function here, and same with the radius. So as you can see here, I'm using the same image as before, and it gives us the minimum enclosing circle of the shape. Okay, so you have to remember that the input in case of minimum enclosing circle uh, can only be the contours or the canny edge detector output. And as you can see, it gives us a perfect result in this case and gives us a minimum enclosing circle. After that, this is the minimum area rectangle which I mentioned before. So similarly, I am passing the contour 1 as the shape which I want to get the minimum area rectangle of, and after that I use cv2 dot box points. Okay, so the output of minimum area rectangle is in the form of this which I mentioned below: x coordinate, y coordinate, width and height. Okay, so the box points function, so the box points function which I have used here converts the output into the vertices of the rectangle, and end 0 which I have used here converts them to integers. Okay, so instead of np dot end 0, you can also you can also perform int function on each of the items of the list which is output as the box point, which is given as the output of the box points function. Okay, so box points, essentially what it does is it converts the format in which we get the output from the minimum area rectangle into a desired output, which we want to draw the contours. For drawing the contours, we need the corners of the rectangle and not the width and the height. You can do that manually also, or you can use the box points function. So as you can see here, this gives us the minimum area rectangle. So if you use the contours, if you use the bounding rectangle, then it will always give you a perfectly horizontal rectangle only. So in this case, as you have seen, the rectangle is automatically rotated in order to give us the minimum area rectangle. So this is only achievable by using the minimum area rectangle function. Okay, so next we come to the Huff circles. So these use the algorithm of Huff. Okay, so these are same as fine contours, but these are much more powerful than that. Okay, so what I first do is I take the image as an input, and after that I convert it to grayscale. I apply the median blur. So if you remember, the input of the dot find contours or all the functions which I mentioned above could only be the uh, single channel image, but this is not the case with Huff circles. These are much more powerful, and you can give your original image also, and it processes that only. You don't have to first use canny edge detector or mask it or something like that. Okay, so I've mentioned the syntax here. So what we use is, first we specify the source image. After that we specify the method. Okay, so method which I have used here is Huff gradient. Okay, so there are multiple methods available also. So Huff gradient works fine for me. Most of the times I use OpenCV. Most of the times I use Huff circles in my projects. So I hope that you will also be using only Huff gradient, but you can explore the other methods which are present. So for me, Huff gradient works the best. Okay, so after that we have DP. Okay, so in DP I have mentioned one. DP is the ratio of accumulator resolution upon the image resolution. So you can understand this. It is simply the resolution of the output image upon the resolution of the image original image. So don't want to scale the image. I don't want to distort also. So I will keep this as 1. Okay, so after that the next parameter is the minimum distance. So min distance is the minimum distance between two detected circles. If the parameter is too small, multiple neighbor circles may be falsely detected in addition to true one. If it is too large, some circles may be missed. So it is good to keep it around 100, 150, 200 also. So don't go below that or above that, but you also can always experiment with the parameters to see if to see what works fine with your input image. So 120 works fine for me, so I've used that. After that we have parameter 1. So parameter 1 is the first method specific parameter. In case of CV Huff gradient, it is the higher threshold of the two passed to the canny edge detector. So if you remember, we passed two thresholds into the canny edge detector. So uh, so in this case also, the parameter 1 is the higher threshold which we sent in the canny edge detector, and the parameter 2 is the smaller one which we sent in the canny edge detector. Okay, so it has no relation with the canny edge detector. It is just an analogy which I have made. So the parameter 1 and the parameter 2 are the method specific parameter. So I have used the CV Huff gradient here. So in case of Huff gradient, the meaning of parameter 1 and 2 is this, the higher threshold and the lower threshold. But if you use some other method, then the definition of these parameters might change. So you only need to see what the effect of parameter 2 is. The smaller it is, the more false circles may be detected. So it is advised to keep the parameter 2 to be around parameter 2 to be somewhat in the medium range. And after that we have minimum radius and the maximum radius. So by default the value of both is 0. So if you don't want to specify any value, then you can keep it as 0, as I have done with the maximum radius. But I have specified the minimum radius of the circle, that is 10 pixels. So any circle which is less than 10 won't be detected, which has radius, any circle which has radius less than 10 pixels won't be detected. Get the output of the detected circles by the half circles in the variable called circles, and after that we use this. So you might be wondering what this is. So this is essentially what it does is, it will first round off the uh, round off the coordinates and the radius, the coordinates of it will round off the coordinates of the centers of the circles and the radius, and then it will convert it to the integer format. Okay, so this is a very basic syntax. So after that I create a for loop to iterate over all the detected circles which are present in my variable. So the in this case also it is returned as a list only, as it did in the case of find contours, and I can simply iterate over the list and draw different circles. So in this case also the format is, the first element which will be present in a circle will be the x coordinate of the center, the second will be the y coordinate of the center, so and the third will be the radius. So instead of assigning particular variables of them, I am directly using the elements from the list itself. So now if I run it, you can see here. So you must be seeing the red dots in the center of the circle. So I have done that using the second raw circles which I have passed. So I've kept the center coordinate same and kept the radius as 2 pixels. So this will be a very small circle, and apparently it will appear as a dot which you can see at the center. Okay, so half circles is very powerful and it gives a perfect output most of the times in our case. So after that we also have half lines. So half line we are using here half lines P. Okay, so P stands for probabilistic, and this is the optimized version of half lines, and is faster, easier to use and more efficient. So for the half circles we could use any image, but for half lines P we need to give the uh, input as a single channel image. Okay, so we will be first be using the Canny edge detector. Okay, so after that we will be using the half lines P. Okay, so half lines P requires a number of parameters. So the first is the minimum line length, okay, and the second is the maximum line gap. Okay, so the minimum line length I have specified it to be 1 because I want most of the lines to be detected. So minimum line length, so whatever value you pass here would be kept as the minimum value of the minimum length of the line which would be detected. So any line which has length below this parameter would not be detected. And the maximum line gap is the line gap which is present between two successive lines. Okay, so the name is quite self-explanatory. I have mentioned the syntax here. So the syntax is like this. First we specify the input image, which should be a single channel image. So after that, the parameter which it requires is row. So row is the distance resolution of the accumulator in pixels. So you won't be able to understand what the accumulator is and what is the distance resolution. So uh, you only need to understand that low values of row will give precision. So in my case, I've kept it to be 1. Okay, so you can play with it, you can increase it or decrease it to change what effect it has. After that, I have we have the parameter theta. Theta is the angle resolution of accumulator. So this is also required to be kept low to have precision. So I have kept it to np dot pi by 180. So this is, you can use pi using a math library or something like that. I am using the pi of numpy. So this is used like this, np dot pi by 180. So this is essentially 1 degree. So this is the best practice to keep it at 1 degree only. After that, I have passed into the minimum line length and maximum line gap. Next, it gives us output as a list like every other contour function. So after that, I iterate over the lines, and after that I extract the parameters from the line and draw the line. So the it gives us the x and y of the start point and x and y coordinates of the end point of the line which is detected. Okay, so I use that, and as you can see, it has detected almost every line. Some of the lines like below are not detected, but you can play with the parameters and give 100%, get 100% output if you want. So the next is the background detector or the background subtractor. So sometimes you want to do motion detection. Okay, so you must have heard about motion detection. Most of the cameras which are used in warehouses and factories have motion detection and only get switched on when some motion is detected. Okay, to save electricity and to save the memory allocation of the video. So you can use this to create a motion detector of your own. So it will only detect those objects which are in motion. So for that, I am using a demo video which is named openbg1.mp4, and then I'm using this function. So this function is used to create a background subtractor. Okay, so we only want to detect those objects which are in motion, so we want to subtract the still background. Okay, so this is used to do that. And what we do next is we read the uh, ret and frame from cap dot read, and we apply this. So the syntax is quite easy. You simply do fgbg. Fgbg is the name of the variable in which this function is stored right now. So I use fgbg dot apply and then in brackets frame. So you can also do cv2 dot create background subtractor mog2 and then dot apply frame. Okay, so just for demonstration purposes, I have created a separate variable for it. Okay, so this just applies the background subtractor to our frame. So then if I show you the output, as you can see here, the this is the input video. This is a recording of a security camera, and as you can see, only those objects are detected which are in motion. As you can see, these are the two people which are in motion and are being detected. And after that, you can also see some of these leaves because the leaves are moving because of the wind. Okay, so next we come across the cascade classifiers. Okay, so cascade classifiers is used for identifying objects in a image or a video, and is based on the concept of features proposed by Paul Voila and Michael Jones. Okay, so I have provided the link here to all the hair cascades. We will be using a hair cascade. So hair cascades are nothing but just machine learning algorithms which make your work easier by letting you detect the objects and all in the image or a video. So you don't have to create a machine learning code for yourself to detect those, and you can simply use the hair cascades. So there are multiple hair cascades available, so I would be using the front face and the eye detection. Okay, so first I load the cascade classifiers. These are in format of .xml, and I have downloaded them from the GitHub link which I have provided here, and now I'm loading them into the cascade classifier and then creating a variable out of them. After that, I start the video capture and convert the video capture to gray, and then I just specify faces is equal to face cascade, the variable which I created this, and dot detect multiscale. So this is the function which is used, and I have provided the syntax here. So the first parameter is the image, the source image, and after that the scale factor. So the scale means that the image is scaled by this amount for optimized detection. But if it is very high, then there can be issues like if you bring your face very close to the camera, then it will not be able to detect your face, because in actual the algorithm is seeing your frame at 3x, so it would be very zoomed in, and if you bring your face very close to the camera, then it might just go out of the frame and it won't be able to get detected. And these parameters are optional and you can skip them also. So I have used the scale factor as 1.1 for optimal detection. You can also use 1.2 up to 2 up to 3, but I don't recommend actually going above scale factor of 2 or 2.5, but you can experiment with these parameters and decide what is suitable according to your purpose. Okay, so uh, the next parameter is the minimum neighbors. So this is the parameter specifying how many neighbors each candidate rectangle should have to retain it. The higher value means less number of detections but with higher quality, and less number of false positives. Okay, so this will specify as to how many neighbors of the detected rectangle should it also include in the detection. So suppose you have multiple people standing together, so you might want to keep the value low, as you want all the faces, all the neighboring faces to get detected. But suppose if you have only a single person in the video, so you might want to keep the value a little high, so as to get a better quality and reduce the number of false positives, because there is no face around, so you only want to uh, detect the single face which is present and with high quality. So this can be used to create multiple projects like blink rate detection. So I created the blink rate detection software for the car safety mechanism. So you can use these simple functions to create very powerful programs which can be used to solve your day-to-day problems. You can also use this in face mask detection. So blink rate detection actually does not require any other library, just it is just OpenCV based, but the face mask detection will require a prior knowledge of machine learning, etc. But you can do that very simply using the OpenCV. Yeah, so after that we get the detected faces as a list of faces, and similarly we get the we actually get the minimum bounding rectangles of the faces. Okay, so we get the x, y, and the width and height of the image as we got in the minimum area rectangle function. So after that, we just use cv2 dot rectangle image and then specify the first corner and the uh, other corner, opposite corner, to draw the bounding rectangle of the face. Okay, then after that the color and the thickness. Okay, so after that I'm specifying the ROI and creating a particular region of the image. So as I know that eyes would all only be located in on the face itself, right? So why to apply the eye detection on the whole image when I can do it more efficiently and more quickly by only giving the input as only the part of the image which contains my face, as I have already detected the face. So I will create the ROI, the region of interest, as the detected face using this simple syntax. So from the yth row to the y plus h row, and from xth column to the x plus wth column. So as you can take a minute or so and try to think how this will be the uh, whole rectangle. Convert the only the face part of the image into an ROI. So now we can send the ROI gray. So the gray was the one which we converted to the uh, grayscale, the frame to the grayscale. So you will give the output as the ROI gray, and I have specified the scale factor as 1.3 because the eyes are very small and it can be difficult to detect. So I have given a little higher parameter, 1.3, and the output is very similar, the xy coordinates, and after that width and height. So I have specified different parameter different variables for this, as I didn't want to mix the uh, variables of faces and eyes, and we use the same syntax to draw the bounding box of eyes. As you can see here, it is able to detect my face very correctly, and also it is quite clearly directing my eyes. So the output is quite nice in this case, and you can use the cascade classifiers for multiple usage. For You can use the cascade classifier for multiple projects in which you require detection of certain objects like faces, eyes, or there are many other hard cascades available on the GitHub link which I have mentioned above. You can go and visit that link and try to find the hard cascade algorithm which suits you best. There are many other features like template matching, grab cut, corner detection, which I didn't include due to time constraint and their level of complexity. If you want to explore more about them, you can refer to the extra links that uh, we share, and also the you can if you want to explore more about them, you can visit the OpenCV documentation, which is simply docs.opencv.org. It has an excellent documentation and you can find any function there for reference. I hope you found today's session very interesting and informative, and this will be the end of today's session. Thank you.